Welcome to Chicago Live. It is 3:06 on your Monday afternoon. We have just switched hosts, and I am Tia Ewing. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Let's talk about the city of Chicago. We have heard out of the mouth of Brandon Johnson saying words like, a safe and better, more sustainable Chicago really lies on the shoulders of the youth. And very interesting information coming out of the city of Chicago today. We're learning that youth summer job providers, they are outraged that alders are supporting massive cuts to youth jobs right now. And we want to bring in someone that knows all about it. This person has actually benefited from having a youth job, a summer job in the city that was provided by the city through funding through the arts of nonprofits. And this is Itohan Osayeg-Bovo. Thank you so much for being with us right now. You're with the Chicago Black Voter Project. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name. If I did, make sure you correct me. I want to talk to you about this very important issue. Let's first start out with your own story that you have of being able to be a participant in a youth summer job. What was that like for you?
Yes, first, thank you so much for having me. Yes, you did not butcher my name. My name is Itohan Osayeg-Bovo. I was able to participate in a program at the Guild Complex and through Young Chicago Authors when I was 15 years old that allowed me to meet with other young poets from across the city and come and learn from some of the most well-respected poets, not just in Chicago, but in the country and in the world. And it was very important to me to not only have an opportunity to share my story, but to be compensated to do something that I love that helped me develop a strong identity and sense of self and connection to community in my city, really probably changed the trajectory of my life. And when I think about youth jobs, I think about that. I think about personal development. I think about identity. I think about it's helpful to be able to help your parents or your household out with some groceries or be able to take care of your own cell phone bill or your school fees. But it's a different thing to invest in the lives of people and allow them to do, young people, allow them to do what they love and get paid for that.
This has been a big push since Mayor Brandon Johnson got in office, making sure that youth have something to do, have a summer job, actually receiving monetary compensation for it, like you just stated. We know 26 older people, they're actually the ones that are pushing for these cuts. The cuts come down to 5,100 youth summer jobs. What does that look like in your mind? We know that a lot of these jobs have been pointed to being reducers of violence in the community. What does that look like in your mind to hear that 5,100 jobs will be cut from the youth around the city of Chicago?
What I hear when I hear 5,100 jobs cut is 5,100 young people who may not have what they need on a day-to-day basis to survive. What I hear is young people who will have more idle time to be on the street and maybe in unsafe conditions or exposed to predatory people or behaviors. I also hear the loss of, again, an opportunity to learn yourself and to develop in ways that were afforded to myself and other people that I know who've grown up in the city of Chicago. It's disappointing, to say the least. It's honestly very confusing when you see all of the attention on teen trends and this idea that the young people in Chicago are violent, when the reality is that they're underinvested in and we could do so much better. So at a time when we should be investing more in them, the idea of cuts just really doesn't make much sense.
I know you have decades of experience in youth mentorship. What are some of the challenges? I know we hear you mentioned the teen trends, for example. What are some of the challenges that young people in the city of Chicago face? And then tell me how these youth jobs would be able to curb some of those issues.
When we think about young people, first of all, we're talking about people who are brilliant and creative and oftentimes more free in their self-expression and their ability to learn and their ability to contribute to society. So when we refuse to allow them opportunities, and specifically opportunities in their neighborhoods, at community centers, at organizations that have invested not only in their lives, but in their family lives, we create a kind of a chasm in the community. We create opportunities again for harm. And when we're thinking about a time when people are choosing between like rent and groceries or paying for transportation or healthcare, again, we're putting a burden on young people that they do not deserve. And I think what needs to be clear to the older people who signed this letter and city council as a whole is that we have a choice to make. We do have, a deficit in the budget, and it's either going to be balanced on the backs of working people, and in this case, our youngest and most vulnerable working people, or corporations are going to have to pay their fair share and show true investment in the city of Chicago, starting with the young people.
Itohan, I'm looking at this and it says here 2025 was Chicago's safest summer in 60 years because of the record investment, particularly in youth employment and violence prevention programs. How do you think this shakes out, these 5,100 jobs being lost when we project to next summer? Do you fear that maybe these numbers won't be as productive as they have been this past summer?
I don't think that that is a fear, because I think that the data supports the opposite. That, we have incredible organizations like Good Kids Mad City, and we've seen youth peacekeepers truly bring down violence in their communities through peer-to-peer mediation. This is not something that anyone but the youth of Chicago can do. They are the most qualified to speak to the circumstances in their neighborhoods, and they are the most qualified to reach their peers. So I think that we should, again, be expanding these programs and learning from the leadership of our young people in the city.
What's your message to the older people that are voting for this, voting for these jobs to be eliminated?
I think, again, it comes down to their understanding of what we value and what our position is as leaders in the city of Chicago. They're elected officials who represent their constituents and who are charged with hearing from them. And I think the young people in Chicago are saying loud and clear that they have to choose them and making the investment in their well-being and their futures, instead of protecting corporations who are, again, receiving some of the largest tax breaks that they have ever in history. And again, young people and their families are facing record disinvestment, and again, in healthcare and education, and they're just trying to make ends meet. So I think the message to the older people is that they have a choice to make, and the choice should be Chicago's youth.
What do you think happens, though? 5,100 less jobs for youth next summer. What do you think that looks like? What will those youth have to do? What will they possibly be doing? Are there any other organizations out there that can provide maybe not 5,100 jobs, but some jobs to kind of fix this?
I mean, the reality is that cutting jobs doesn't just lead to a disruption of life, it costs lives. It literally costs lives. And we're talking about, again, people in communities that they're having to maybe warm their homes using their oven. I know people who've experienced that right now. Again, people who are trying to find ways to pay for their transportation or their health care. And these are choices that are already hurting families. So when we think about 5,100 less jobs, that's 5,100 less youth who are bringing something to the table of these households. That's 5,100 less young people that are occupied through the summer doing something that they enjoy and can also be compensated for. That's 5,100 more young people that may be vulnerable to things like houselessness. This is unacceptable for us, and that's not a future that I even care to imagine, and that's why we're in this fight today.
I'm just curious because we have heard from people on the other side that say, Chicago cannot afford, the state of Illinois as a whole, cannot afford to lose big businesses. Obviously, this proposal eliminates, the community safety surcharge, which would have asked the wealthiest 3% of corporations to pay just a little bit more. What's your take on that? When you hear people say, because we have heard it, people say, let's not tax the businesses anymore. We need them to stay put. We need them here in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, I would just say, I think what we cannot afford to lose is the trust of the young people that we have in the city of Chicago and the investment in them. And I would also say that when we look at cities like New York or we look at states like Massachusetts, and we've seen corporations taxed in other cities and other places, and it has not led to a mass exodus of businesses and opportunities for economic growth for those cities. So I think we have to be also realistic in what we're forecasting. Yes, there's a choice to make, and I think the choice again is clear because we know that we can't afford, as working people, as working families, as young people, we cannot afford to chip in more. If everyone needs to pay their fair share, it is time for the corporations who've received record profits and record tax breaks to invest more in the city of Chicago's young people and invest more in the programs that keep us alive. We're talking about the cost of what, $21 a month per employee. These are costs that are equivalent to a lunch, or a gift exchange in the office. We're not asking them to pay any exorbitant fees. We're asking them to just spend a little bit more so the people in the city, their neighbors, the people that make the city run, can survive the times that we're in right now.
Itohan Osayeg Bovo, I appreciate you so much for your time on the show, giving your perspective, a much needed perspective. Thank you so much for coming on Chicago Live today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. It was an absolute pleasure. Okay.